Dear student, greetings for the day. Today we will study about knitting, terminology and characteristic. Knitting is the production of fabric by forming loops with yarn, which are interlooped in a variety of ways to form the fabric. In knitting process, the loops are formed by single or several yarns feeding simultaneously. It is next to weaving as a method of manufacturing textile products. Knitted fabric consists of a number of consecutive rows of loops, called stitches. As each row progresses, a new loop is pulled through an existing loop. The active stitches are held on a needle until another loop can be passed through them. This process eventually results in a fabric, often used for garments. It is estimated that over 7 million tons of knitted goods are produced annually throughout the world. Previously, knitting of a fabric may be done by hand or by machine to produce shaped and form-fitting clothing articles only. Modern technology has enabled knitted constructions in shaped and unshaped fabrics in order to produce a wide range of apparel, household and industrial end uses. Whatever may be the end use of knits, the construction of interlooping permits the fabric to stretch in all directions, even though the yarn used is having little elasticity. 1. Knitting. It is the production of fabric by forming loops with yarn, which are interlooped in a variety of ways to form the fabric. 2. Weft knitting. Weft knitting is a method of forming a fabric in which the loops are made in horizontal way from a single yarn, and intermeshing of loops take place in a circular or flat form on a crosswise basis. 3. Warp knitting. It is another method of machine knitting. In this method, the fabric is produced by using needles similar to those used in weft knitting, but with the knitted loops made from warp thread being formed down the length of the fabric. The loops, courses, are formed vertically down the length of the fabric from one thread as opposed to across the width of the fabric, as in the weft knitting. Four. Wales. The series of loops that intermeshes vertically are known as wales. Vertical column of loops that are made from same needle in successive knitting cycle. 5. Course. The series of loops those are connected horizontally, continuously are called as course. The horizontal row of loops that are made by adjacent needles in the same knitting cycle. 6. Knitting needle. Knitting is done by spring-beard needles or by latch needles. Spring-beard needles are usually used with fine yarns, whereas latch needles are used in making coarse fabrics. A double latch needles is used to make pearl loops. 7. Stitches. Stitches are the loops made by the needles. They are given various names depending on the way they are made. 8. Stitch density. It is the number of stitches/needle loops per unit areas of a knitted fabric. 9. Stitch length. It is length of yarn in the knitted loop. Larger the stitch length, the more lighter the fabric. 10. Open loop. The loop forming yarns do not cross at the bottom of the loop. 11. Closed loop. The legs of the loop cross so that loop closes. 12. Face loop. During loop formation, when the new loop emerges through the old loop from the back to the front, it is called as face loop or weft knit loop. 13. Back loop. If the new loop passes from the face or the front to the back of the old loop, it is called back loop. 14. Technical face. The side of the knitted fabric that consists of face or knit loops is called the technical face of the fabric. 15. Technical back. The side of the knitted fabric having full of back or purl loops is called the technical back of the fabric. 16. Needle loop. The upper part of the loop produced by the needle drawing the yarn is called as needle loop. It is the basic unit of knitted structure. It consists of a head, H, or crown and two side limbs or legs, L. At the base of each leg is a foot, F, which measures through the head of the loop formed at the previous knitting cycle, usually by that needle. The yarn passes from the foot of one loop into the foot and leg of the next loop formed by it. Sinker loop. The lower part of the knitted loop is technically referred as sinker loop. It is the connection of two legs belonging to the neighboring stitches lying laterally. The sinker loop is the piece of yarn that joins one weft knitted needle loop to their next. 18. Overlap. In warp knitting, the lateral movement of the guide bars on the front side of the needle is called as overlap. The movement is normally restricted to one needle space. 19. Underlap. In warp knitting, the lateral movement of the guide bars on the back side of the needle is called as underlap. 20. Gauge or cut indicates the fineness of the stitch and is measured as the number of needles in a specific space of the needle bar. The higher the gauge, the finer is the fabric. 21. Knit stitch. This is the basic knitting stitch, also called as plain stitch. The looped formation of the stitch is shown in figure. It is also known as jersey stitch. 22. Purl stitch. This is actually the reverse of knit stitch. The back of the plain knit fabric is a purl stitch structure. These fabrics have more vertical stretch than in horizontal direction. 23. Mis-stitch. This stitch is created when one or more knitting needles are deactivated and do not move into position to accept a yarn. It is also called as float or welt stitch. 24. Tuck stitch. It is formed when a knitting needle holds its old loop and then receives a new yarn. Two loops will then collect in the needle hook. The action may be repeated several more times, but the yarn eventually will have to be cast off the needle and knitted. 25. Single jersey. The weft knits produced with a single set of needles, flat or tubular, are called single jersey. 26. Double jersey. The weft knits produced with two sets of needles mounted on two needle beds, flat or tubular, are called double jersey or double knit fabrics. By properties or characteristics of any material we can judge a complete concept about those materials. It is essential to know fabric characteristics. If we know characteristics of any fabric, then we identify that what kind of fabric. We will also know handle, softness, tightness, etc. Face side and back side of fabric are different. 2. Curl or roll of fabric occurs at the edges. 3. Wales are clearly visible on the face side of the fabric. 4. Extensibility in width-wise is approximately twice than length. 5. Unraveling of fabric occurs from either side is possible. 6. Thickness of fabric is approximately twice the diameter of yarn used. 7. There is only one series of knitted loop courses in the fabric. 1. Interlock the technical face of plain on both sides so the appearance of face and back are same. 2. The wales of each side tree exactly opposite to each other and are locked together. 3. Widthwise and length elongations are approximately the same as single jersey. 4. The fabric does not curl at the edges. 5. The fabric can be unraveled from the knitted last. 6. 2 yarn must be removed to unravel a complete repeat of knitted courses. 7. Fabric thickness is approximately twice than that of single jersey. One dot purl is reversible structure. The both side appearance are same. 2. Extensibility is same as all direction. 3. There is no curling tendency. It does not curl at the edges. 4. The fabric will run in the wale direction starting from either end. 5. Unraveling of fabric course by course from either side is possible. 6. The fabric tends to be 2 or 3 times thicker than single jersey. 7. There are 2 types of pearl needle bed machine: flat bed pearl and circular pearls. Basically, knitting is broadly divided into hand and machine knitting. The hand knitting uses a set of needles. The modernized version hand knitting is machine knitting. Machine knitting saves a considerable amount of time but does require learning to operate the machines correctly. Most, if not all, hand knitting patterns can be worked up on a machine, either identically or in a similar design. Knitting using machine proceeds more quickly than in hand knitting. Usually 2 straight needles held in the hand and each stitch is manipulated individually across the row in hand knitting, whereas, in machines an entire row of loops are worked in a single movement. Machine knitting is further broadly classified as weft and warp knitting depending upon the method of manufacturing. Domestic knitting machines use the weft knitting method, which produces a fabric similar to hand knitting. The following flow chart indicates the type of machine knitting methods.